When a young woman's body is found in an apartment building, police suspect her neighbor, a former hockey player turned recluse. But when they search his apartment, they find that he has disappeared, and there are traces of blood all over his apartment. Where could he have gone? It was a cold January evening in Sweden when the police received a distressing call. A young woman had been found dead in her apartment. Her name was Alexandra Pascalesti, and she was just 23 years old. The emergency services were dispatched to the scene. When they arrived at the apartment, they found Alexandra lying lifeless on the floor. It quickly became apparent that she had been the victim of foul play, and so it was up to the police to find her killer. The police began by interviewing Alexandra's friends and family. They discovered that she had recently moved into the apartment and that she had been living there alone. They also learned that she had been in a relationship with a man named Peter, but they had broken up just a few weeks before she was killed. However, none of this information led the police to the killer, so they decided to try something else. They went back to Alexandra's apartment and conducted a thorough search. This is when they found something that would change everything. In the apartment above Alexandra's was a man named Peter. He was a former hockey player who had retired from the sport due to a serious injury. He had always been a bit of a recluse and kept to himself. But after the police found traces of blood in his apartment, they grew suspicious. Could Peter be the killer? The police decided to pay Peter a visit and see if they could question him about the crime. But when they arrived at his door, they were shocked to find that he wasn't there. It was clear that Peter had known the police were coming for him and had managed to escape. Now the police were in a race against time to find him before he could get away. The first place they looked was Peter's apartment. They wanted to see if there was anything there that could help them track him down. But what they found instead was even more disturbing. All of the furniture had been removed from the apartment, including the bed, dresser, and sofa. There was nothing left except for a TV and a few boxes. But when the police searched those boxes, they found something that made them gasp. Inside one of the boxes was a large amount of cash, around $100,000. And in another box, they found several large knives. It was clear that Peter had known that the police were coming for him and had prepared for their arrival. But why? Was he really the killer? As the police continued their search of Peter's apartment, they found something else that gave them a clue as to where he might have gone. It was a small piece of paper with a name written on it, Tony's. The police weren't sure what this meant, but they decided to follow up on it anyway. They went to the local pub and asked if anyone there knew Peter, and much to their surprise, someone did. A man named Tony had seen Peter there earlier that day and had even spoken to him briefly. He had no idea that Peter was wanted by the police, though, and he had let him go on his way. With new information in hand, the police were able to track Peter's movements for the day. He had been seen on CCTV cameras near the city center, and they were able to confirm that he had taken a taxi from there. The only problem was the taxi driver had no idea where Peter had gone. After getting dropped off, he had walked out of sight of the CCTV cameras and had not been seen since. The police were stumped. They had no idea where Peter could be hiding, but they were about to get a break when a fisherman spotted something unusual while out on his morning fishing trip. He had seen something floating in the water, and when he pulled it out, he realized it was a suitcase. He immediately called the police and told them what he had found. When the police arrived, they opened the suitcase and found several items that belonged to Peter. There were clothes, shoes, and even his passport. But there was no sign of Peter himself. The police were now convinced that he had tried to flee the country, but where could he have gone? The obvious answer was that he had thrown the suitcase into the water and then fled. But why would he do that? And why did he leave such a big tip? The police were baffled. Meanwhile, Tony, the man who had seen Peter at the bar, couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen something strange in Peter's behavior. So he decided to go back to the bar and take a closer look at the CCTV footage from that day. What he saw shocked him. In the footage, he saw Peter talking to a mysterious woman. She had long blonde hair and was wearing a blue jacket. He didn't think much of it at the time, but now he was starting to think that this woman might have something to do with Alexandra's death. He immediately called the police and told them what he had seen. With new hope, the police reviewed the footage and were able to get a better look at the woman. They put out a description of her to all the local news stations and asked for the public's help in identifying her. Within hours, they had a name. The woman's name was Linda, and she was Peter's ex-wife. The police immediately went to her house, but when they knocked on the door, no one answered. They tried again, but still there was no answer. So they decided to enter the house without a warrant. To their surprise, they found Linda and Peter inside. Peter looked up at the police and calmly said, "I knew you would come for me." The police were shocked. They had finally caught up to Peter, but they still didn't know why he had done what he had done. Did he kill Alexandra? The police searched the house and found a number of items that could help them solve the case. They found Peter's cell phone, which contained text messages from Alexandra. They also found a bloody knife in the kitchen sink. And finally, they found a diary that belonged to Peter. The diary contained his thoughts and feelings about a variety of topics, but there was one entry in particular that stood out. It was dated the same day that Alexandra was killed. And in it, Peter wrote, "Today's the day. I can't keep running anymore. I have to tell her how I feel about her." The police were stunned. It seemed that Peter had confessed to killing Alexandra. But why? What had caused him to snap? The police questioned Peter about the murder, but he refused to say anything. He was arrested and taken to jail, where he awaits trial. The police believe that Peter had been stalking Alexandra for some time, and that he had become obsessed with her. This is why he had written the diary entry saying that today was the day he would tell her how he felt about her. But what exactly did he mean by that? Did he plan to confess his love for her, or did he plan to harm her? Unfortunately, we may never know the true answer to this question. Peter is still refusing to speak to the police, and his trial is still a long way off. But one thing is certain, the quiet town is still reeling from the shock of Alexandra's death. No one could have predicted that such a tragedy would strike their community. And many are still trying to come to terms with the fact that such a young life could be taken so soon. As for Peter, he will have to live with the consequences of his actions for the rest of his life. He is now a murderer and will never be able to return to the life that he once lived. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and comment for more content like this. Thanks for watching.